And like clockwork, we are back. Um, I think it's safe to say this is a weekly thing. Um, what's interesting is I don't know. I feel like I was last week. I was more excited about the podcast than I am today. But I think it goes with the theme of today's conversation. So I look forward to kind of expanding upon this. But before we dive any deeper into this, I always want to start off with an exercise of mindfulness. Um, Focus on your breath for the next 10 seconds or so, starting now. There we go. And now we're here. As always, I like to, I don't know, always fresh out of mindfulness and just being focused. A little brain teaser to get the mind going a little sharp. And today's is what's easy to lift but hard to throw. What is easy to lift but hard to throw. If my mood is a little off, I apologize. I'm not sure it's gonna come across on camera. Uh, but yeah, I want to start off today with a story of sorts, and just an experience, my own personal experience, a journey of mine, something that I've had to battle with consciously. I want to say maybe sometime at the end of last year, so fall of 2023. At that point, I may have been leading my startup for about 2.5 years. Specifically, Youngta, we are a private on-demand e-commerce checkout, heavily focused on identity. Um, to this point, my titles were all over the place. I was just in heavy pursuit of every passion of mine, and I had the freedom and flexibility to kind of do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. And I became a fintech startup founder. And things change. I mean, early on in the early stages of it, I still felt like myself. Um, I still felt as creative as I've ever been. But gradually, as I fell into this role of CEO slash CTO slash founder, uh, I found myself kind of losing that spark, and it came to a crashing halt sometime in the fall of 2023, and I couldn't figure out why, because this is something I really wanted to do. I set out to do it. It was my brainchild. It was every bit of my creativity that brought it to life. Um, but I don't know. In a particular moment, it didn't feel as fulfilling as it did up to that point, and I had to reconnect with myself. I think I made a LinkedIn post about it. But the weekend after that experience, I did everything that I wanted to do or I could do over the weekend. I got back to playing sports. I boxed. I played basketball at my daughter's parent. Um, they allowed the parents to play in a basketball game, which we won. And then I played football, which is something I hadn't done in a while. And I did all that over the weekend. Um, I did some driving. I spent some time in darkness just to kind of recalibrate. And then uh, it almost felt like I kind of I was reconnected with my creative spark. And I think in that moment I realized one thing. For the last year and a half, as at least to that point, for the last year and a half, I wasn't being creative at all. Like my creativity, I just found myself in this busy work thing where it's just like almost like a conveyor belt of, all right, get this done, get this done. I didn't have time to think. I was purely reacting to things. There was so much happening. I was working on partnerships. I was trying to integrate some technology. I was having way too many conversations with VCs, and I got out of touch of my creativity. And then it hit me that, one, a conscious realization that I was kind of disconnected from my creativity because what I prioritized at the moment didn't need it. It didn't utilize it. It wasn't active in my everyday life. And then in that moment, I realized you hear it all the time. Often people talk about the curse of creativity. And I think I experienced what the downside of being creative or being too creative is. Because it then becomes a lifeline. And if you're not constantly attached to it, being fed by it, I've heard people say, or online people say, you die. And it might not necessarily be a physical death, but a spiritual, emotional, a psychological death. And I've experienced it. There's this idea that we always have to constantly be creative, be creating. And the moment we aren't, we're lifeless. We almost feel hopeless. Like the one gift I have to give the world, to give the universe, if I'm unable to give that, then why is there any use for me? And that's a dilemma, and that we all face as creatives. It's to the word I used earlier. It's almost like a curse. And some of us who are more conscious of it, we use it as a scapegoat, right? We find ourselves where we always want to be in the idea and the creation phase, and this allows us to kind of avoid any type of implementation or execution needed to see those ideas turn into innovation or actual products. It requires a level of determination and discipline that most creatives, we don't, if I'm honest, we don't have. And I think I've heard people talk about creatives as being they lack focus, and I don't believe that. I think once you find your creativity, it requires a certain level of focus. But we can, in fact, get lost in our creativity, and that can detach us from the real world. And I think that is the scary part about it all, because then we become loners, and we find comfort in isolation, and that's not good for us or society in general. But I want to talk about that process of avoidance of implementation and execution. I think we'd rather have great ideas than have failed projects. I don't know that we are comfortable getting feedback or uncomfortable with the idea of being scrutinized by somebody else, having our art criticized. And I think the fear of that almost creates avoidance. And because we avoid, we create this constant repeating loop of, instead of executing on an idea, we just stay trapped in that idea. And I can be honest to say that I've been a victim of that. I think victim is a wrong word. I have experienced that. And I think if I'm honest with myself in this moment, I think NOM, which is our creativity and innovation as a service shop is the epitome of that concept or idea. It's like, because I was coming up with all these ideas, and I didn't necessarily want to take on the burden of seeing them come to life. Maybe honestly, and I'm doing some analysis of myself in this moment. Maybe NOM was because it gave me an opportunity to walk into opportunities where I can be creative, but not have to take the responsibility of seeing it come to life. Maybe in that moment, or in these moments, it fills my creative cup, and I can walk away without the burden of having to again carry that, because whatever ideas come from a creative process, there's so much that has to happen after that. It's almost like that's just the first step. And if you've done business or been involved in any business dealings or relationships, you understand the requirements that come along with that. There's infrastructure requirements, there's marketing, there's advertising, there's strategies, all that go into bringing just an idea for you to take an idea and then bringing it to fruition. And then the iteration of that, product market fit, understanding how consumers receive it. And those are the challenges that I think most creatives avoid. And unfortunately, that's the most important part of business, right? And maybe that's why most creatives aren't the best business people. There's a theory that, I think historically, or history has shown that most creatives die broke. Not because they aren't skilled enough to create wonderful works of art. And I want to be consistent with this theme that art doesn't necessarily have to be artistic. And art doesn't have to showcase itself in a traditional sense. But the point is that us creatives, we create these things, and we are, one, uncomfortable with the idea of it being criticized, and then two, we're even more uncomfortable with the idea of bringing it to life, bringing it to market, and that's honestly, that is a challenge, and I think that's what I face with my fintech startup. In one particular moment, when I was faced with the reality that for the foreseeable future, based on what I'm trying to accomplish with this startup, the role and the hat that I need to wear, the cap that I need to wear, doesn't involve creativity. Can I utilize it? Yes, it can help enhance the experience and kind of make that process easier and more innovative, but ultimately it is not a creative role in any sense of the word. And I had to come to grips with that. Give it a second while the sirens pass by. But that was something that I had to it was a hard realization that I cannot, in this moment, this is not an I cannot say, all right, well, on to the next creative thing. No, this is my livelihood. My life depends on this. My family's well-being depends on this. This is not something that I could just drop and then on to the next. And I had to sit with that, because at some point your creativity becomes bigger than you. And I made this into a thing. I made it into a startup. I made it into an actual business. I employ people. I build relationships because of this. I've had people invest in me as a person, behind this idea. So now the onus of responsibility is greater than it's ever been. It's not an idea that I came up with in a dark room and never told any about it. It's public now. But in the fall of last year, it hit me, and I realized that I had to find alternative ways to fill my creative cup, in order to still fulfill my role as founder and CEO of Ayunta, but not lose myself while pursuing this entrepreneurial journey. And it's hard because there was a time in my life where anybody who knew me would see me as this Renaissance man. Any idea I had, I would pursue it. Music, on and off camera, fascination with fashion and architecture and all these things. And I was an avid traveler, and I was doing all these things. And I think in my head, that's when I was the best version of me. And that all that has changed now. Responsibility is greater than it's ever been, beyond from a business side, even from a personal side, right? So I'm a father. I'm a father of 3. I'm a partner. I have all these responsibilities that creativity helps in those relationships. My children feel as if though I can fix anything, and I've had to showcase that. And fortunately, I can lean on my creativity for that. And similarly, my relationship with my lady, it's the same thing. I mean, she leans on me for my creativity to help in the things that she's working on. But that is the gift of it. I think the curse of it, if we're just kind of keeping it to just those human relationships, is as a creative who lives in his creativity, inherently I'm a problem solver. And I strive to find peace in chaos, or find structure in chaos. And for a lot of people, for a lot of us, we're comfortable in chaos. It's almost like it seems chaotic, but it's organized. I think for a lot of us, we need that, those chaotic moments. And as a problem solver, like we set out to solve every problem. And what I realize, especially in relationships, it's less about problem solving, and more about just experiencing feelings and being a sounding board of some sort, without being forced to have to solve the problem. And that's difficult for most creatives. I can speak for myself. It's extremely difficult. And it's almost like going against what comes natural to me. And this is another reason why I speak to this idea of it being a gift and a curse. It's not all bad, though. Definitely not all bad. I'm not going to sit here and bite the hand that feeds me. And creativity has been feeding me for a huge part of my life, if not all of it. And we talked about how amazing creativity is, and all the ways we can connect to it and benefit from it, and how we can leverage it to kind of make our lives more fruitful. But throughout it all, I've I've learned a lot about myself, who I am as a person, um, the things that fascinate me, what interests me. It's just a journey of self awareness, and I can, I think I've accepted the fact that I'm a divergent thinker. I see the world in ideas. I always say it's, I don't necessarily see the world how it is. I see it how it uh, could be, but better at how it should be. But it's a tough way to live because I can't, it's hard for me to appreciate things the way they are because my mind naturally wants to innovate on top of it. Um, and I just have to find creative ways to one, uh, be conscious of the fact that what is happening. Two, continue to practice mindfulness so I can at least appreciate the moment for what it is. And hopefully, uh, that is enough to kind of keep me going, keep me sane, and it doesn't continue to affect me too much. Um, I think as creatives, we are forever going to find comfort in creativity. We're forever going to choose creative experiences and a creative process over execution, implementation, or roles that we feel don't leverage our creativity. One thing about creatives, we trust the process. We never rush the process. And I would live by that. So with that said, as always, I don't want to extend this longer than it needs to be. Going back to the brain teaser that started us off was, what is easy to lift but hard to throw? A feather. A feather is easy to lift but hard to throw. Till next week, be great.